Right, so it is day 86 of my New Year's resolution to plant a tree for every single day, and so far, so good. About to have that tested tomorrow, but let's get on with it. Right, so for today's planting I wanted to go with something a little bit special, and I wanted to go with something from the west, and I failed to find cocoa, which would be the ideal because that is obviously the source of chocolate. It's also got a very rich cultural history and comes from the western continent, so the neotropics. But I did find quite a special tree, and that is Adansonia digitata, which is the westernmost species of baobab tree. So this is the only, or possibly one of two, depending on your definitions, species of baobab that is native to the African mainland. It is a truly gigantic tree-like succulent. The baobabs themselves are spread across Africa, Madagascar, Australia, and I think possibly into Indonesia and Asia. I'm not entirely sure about that. But they are truly iconic trees and very much associated in Zambia with the valleys. Particularly in South Luangwa National Park, where there are some really massive ancient ones. They're a very, very striking part of the landscape. They also produce an edible fruit. It's a very dry fruit. It has a texture which is very much like sort of chalk, and a flavour which is very much like vitamin C in chalk, to my taste. It can be used to make things like tartar sauce and a whole bunch of other useful sort of cooking things. It can be really good for flavouring drinks, and it is used traditionally in some areas to make beers, I believe. And it is very nutritious indeed, hence the vitamin C flavour. So the bark is quite often used for traditional medicine, but the tree itself also has a lot of stories attached to it, usually involving people who have gone gathering wood, often children, either lying down next to the tree to get out of the sun, or going into the caves that these trees often create as their stems go massive and hollow, going inside that to shelter from a storm, and then ending up trapped in there. Either within the bark itself or just sort of trapped within the cell within the tree, and then people either have to bargain with the tree to get them back somehow, or very often the tree just eats them and incorporates them, including their personalities, into the tree. So anytime you go past the tree you can hear them singing or talking for centuries thereafter. So it's quite a complicated tree in that sense, but I think really fascinating part of cultural history. It often doesn't tend to get cut down, so it'll often be a marker, more so in Madagascar, but also to an extent in Zambia, of the height that a forest was. Although it can tower over an awful lot of other native trees that will share its environment even when there hasn't been significant deforestation. The reason it doesn't get cut down is it doesn't really have wood. Its mass just disintegrates very quickly into a wet, pulpy mush, which is not particularly useful. So this one, which is tall enough, I think, that it doesn't really need a marker plant in the form of a Dracaena, and it's been stun hardened in the nursery where I got it, so it shouldn't need any shelter. It's also going to be losing its leaves quite soon anyway, because they do drop their leaves for most of the year, which is how they earn the name upside down tree, because they often look like a tree which has been pulled up and just shoved back in the group. So you just got the taproot and all sorts of feeder roots coming off it above ground, completely devoid of leaves for a large part of the year. So it will be leafless quite soon, I suspect, but I'm going to be putting around it as a sort of ground cover and physical barrier and toxic barrier. I'm going to be putting some Aloe cameroni and some Kalanchoe pinnata. So a little bit further away from that, I'm going to put one of the much larger aloes. So this is Aloe africana, which I will probably be making the case in a few weeks' time for treating as a tree in itself. But today we're not doing that. But this should, by the next strains, hopefully be big enough and prominent enough that when the sort of annuals around here, so mostly here it is Mexican sunflower and sun hemp, when they come up again, it should be easy enough to keep track of where the baobab is, so it doesn't get damaged when I'm scything those down. But yeah, that should be everything for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please tune in again tomorrow when there should be another one going up. I will be filming that in the very small hours of tomorrow morning because I will be going out of town, so I'll be trying to schedule it to go up. So we'll see if that works. We'll see if I am still technology compatible at all. Hopefully I am. But yeah, so have a good one, and yeah, plant trees. I'm going to look at them as succulent trees. Sorry, we've got a little Lophostrephes. So this is Lophostrephes, which is another one of the giant millipedes. So it's another Spirostreptid, related to Doratogonus that you may have seen a few weeks ago here. This is probably the most drought tolerant of any of our millipede. So this one does show up quite late into the dry season, and you might see it's got a somewhat textured skin. That does seem to help it conserve moisture, and it does, yeah, again, stay active right through winter. Sometimes you will be finding these crawling around above ground, not seemingly bothered by the drop in humidity that will kill most of their relatives. Something else you may be able to see is this is actually a male. You might see a small gap just behind the head there. It's curled down at the moment, but as it straightens out, you can see a small gap just behind the head, which is where a pair of legs have been modified into the male reproductive organs, which is on the 7th segment usually. So yeah, so that is a male Lophostrepus, or one of the armoured millipedes, and we'll be letting it get on its way.